Hi everyone, this is Devleena welcoming you once again to another iconic episode of Iconic Ads with Devleena and Saurabh. And with me, I have my expert co host, Mr. Saurabh Bajaj. Hi Saurabh,
Hi, good to
welcome
be
once
here, guys.
again.
Good to be
And
here.
happy to have you again, Saurabh. And I'm so happy to announce our guest for today, Miss Aditi Anand, who is heading creative strategy for Coca-Cola, India, and Southwest Asia. And she has worked with substantial companies like Flipkart, Airtel, Micromax, Nokia. So we have lots to talk, Aditi. But let's talk about Airtel first today. And before we get into the conversation, I'll play the ad.
चाय के लिए जैसे टोस्ट होता है
वैसे हर एक फ्रेंड जरूरी होता है
ऐसे हर एक फ्रेंड जरूरी होता है
कोई सुबह 5 बजे नींद से जगाए कोई रात को 3 बजे जान बचाए एक तेरी कड़की में शेयरिंग करे और एक तेरे बजट में स्नीक इन करे
कोई नेचर से गेस्ट कोई होस्ट होता है पर हर एक फ्रेंड जरूरी होता है
एक घड़ी घड़ी काम आए पर कभी कभी कॉल करे
कभी कभी काम है और घड़ी घड़ी कॉल करे
गॉसिप का कोई घूमता फिरता सैटेलाइट कोई साथ रहे तो कर दे सब ऑलराइट कोई एफर्टलेस कोई फोर्स होता है लेकिन हर एक फ्रेंड जरूरी होता है चैट रूम फ्रेंड कोई क्लासरूम फ्रेंड
कोई बाइक पे रेस वाला रूम रूम फ्रेंड शॉपिंग मॉल वाला शॉपिंग फ्रेंड कोई एग्जाम हॉल वाला कॉपिंग फ्रेंड
मूवी वाली ग्रूवी वाली हाई वाली बाय वाली जोक वाली फोक वाली कहा वाली शाना वाली चटी वाली यार वाली
कुत्ते कमीने
एवरीबॉडी सबबॉडी
A to Z
किन किन के नाम भेजा रोस्ट होता है पर हर एक फ्रेंड जरूरी होता है लेकिन हर एक फ्रेंड जरूरी होता है
हर फ्रेंड जरूरी है यार
और हर फ्रेंड से कनेक्टेड रखे एयरटेल दिल जो चाहे पास ला
It's
I
probably all of our favorite ads,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I still
one
remember
of those
that.
ads. That's
This was, I think, 2009, somewhere around then.
this was 2010. Actually,
Hmm.
2010 is when that whole rebranding of Airtel happened. And what people remember it by is this ad, but actually this was a part of a massive rebranding exercise where a lot changed on Airtel, from logo to the visual language to the brand identities. It was a massive exercise, but yes, this was one of the outcomes of those exercises. And of course, a lot went into the research and why we did it, and I'm hoping we'll talk about all of that today.
Yes. So before we get into the conversation, Aditi, our viewers would love to know about your background and about your involvement that time with Airtel and this particular ad campaign. So let's start with that.
Sure. So I have been a marketeer at heart and by profession, been working for 15 years. And during these 15 years, I started out with Airtel. It was actually a campus placement. And I was lucky to actually have landed a brand role right out of college. That is something that generally does not happen. But I started out my management trainee stint was consumer insights, and then from there into brand management. And then the next 6 to 7 years that I spent with Airtel about in brand management, doing the various different things, different lines of businesses, etc. This ad was, as I was mentioning, was 2010, and it was part of a massive rebranding exercise that Airtel did, where the logo, etc., everything changed. I was part of the brand team that led this transformation. And again, as I say, that the thing that stays with us today is the ad, but actually that went inside it was like months and months of work, and a lot happened. But I mean, this is one of the iconic pieces that came out of it, which people still remember today, also after so many years.
I was in Bombay around that time, and I remember it was the rains. I was in Dadar, I was staying in Naigaon, and and I think that there was also some radio campaign which is happening. I think it was the same ad, or it was something about the world's longest friendship chain or something like that on radio. So I was hearing all of that, and it immediately brings me that memory because it was one of those really amazing, powerful pieces of work. We done full 360. There was just so much in it.
Absolutely. You know, the beauty about Airtel was, I'm sure it still is, that all campaigns used to be like these massive 360 campaigns. So when we were thinking and selecting an idea, we would always test it for the malleability of the idea, you know, whether it'll lend itself on radio, whether it'll become a, you know, an outdoor first idea, print, our own media, and so many other things. So yes, this was one of the ideas. I think the beauty of this idea was also that it had a very big digital amplification piece attached to it. So like you're mentioning the longest friendship chain, that idea played out on radio, it also played out on digital. And alongside this ad, there were multiple other digital ads which were taking forward this idea, which was, you know, bringing to life one particular kind of friend, whether it was a booker friend or it was, you know, a conjuice friend or some other friend. So there were various other short form digital content, and that this term had not originated back in 2010, but short form digital content that was alongside this main copy that was conceptualized.
Take us to the beginning, no? Tell us about how did the whole rebranding start? Why was it required? You know, what was, say, the other pieces of advertising? What are some of the insights that sort of triggered this kind of an ad? So tell us some of the backstory.
Sure. So I think if you remember 2010, Airtel, Vodafone, Idea were the three large players at that point in time. Airtel was always the market leader because they were the first ones to launch in the country, I think after BSNL or something. So always had a big chunk of market share, and in telecom it's the customer market share and the revenue market share, the two metrics that you see, and both were good. But what we were feeling in 2010, that because the company and the brand had the first mover advantage, we also had a lot of customer base which was now in their 30s, 35, 40. So it was slowly becoming, because we'd acquired customers young, and typically when for telecom, when customers come in, then there is they stay with the telecom, with the company for a long time, and you know, they had aged. So 1995 is when Airtel launched, and people who came in 1995 and so on, in 2010 they were way above, you know, they're closer to 30, 40, etc. And so what represented in Airtel's brand tracks, which we did very extensively month on month, was that the brand had certain personality which were going with it, and certain which were kind of a deterrent. So for example, the brand was associated to be a leader. It had high stature. It was considered to be a premium brand. It was also considered to be a brand that, you know, the youngsters were saying that I will grow up to own an Airtel someday. Today I am on Idea, I am on Jio, I am on some other, you know, not Jio Reliance, I'm on some other telecom operator which is more affordable. But tomorrow I will grow up to have a BlackBerry on Airtel, or I'll grow up to have an iPhone on Airtel. So two things were happening. One, the brand had the right leadership cues, stature, etc. But it was the age of the customer, active customer base was going up. Young people were saying that this is a great brand, but I need to reach a certain place in my life and then own the brand. So they were saying, you know, today my brand is probably a Vodafone or an Idea or some of the other affordable players. Someday I will come to Airtel. So while you have the current consumer franchise, the future consumer franchise was a question mark because of the perception of the brand being old. The second thing also was that we know that technology has these rapids, right? So there is mobile voice technology, and then you had 2G data, and then you had 3G, and then 4G, and now it's 5G. And any consumer technology product, youth is the first cohort that will latch on to that product. So technology, the first few people or the first cohort that laps up to technology is the youth. So even from a future current business point of view, youth is something that you want to have on your network. And if youth is saying that I will have you one day when I grow up, then that is a problem. So that was really the starting point of this whole exercise. We did a massive brand equity exercise.
Wow, that sounds like a seriously exciting enterprise. Nice.
Massive plan it was.
Right.
It was.
And quite interesting when you mentioned the three players, right? Vodafone, Idea, and Airtel. You know, the ads of Airtel, which I remember are, you know, those border ads. The one with the India-Pakistan border, yeah, which is very philosophical, but at the same time not necessarily youthful. It's not young people finally, but it is very philosophical, nice. It gives you a nice warm feeling about it. Yeah. And then idea, of course, you have this whole what an idea surgery, which feels a little rural almost, very friends of the earth, earthy but relatable. Yeah. And then Vodafone always felt this British puppy, the whole dog, the whole American, the whole British, the whole the international heritage, a quality product from the West. So nobody was really talking youth. People were talking, earthy, people were talking philosophy, and people were talking international, but there was nobody really talking youth. And in that sense, it was a very interesting space to sort of acquire, right? And maybe because of the puppy and the child, Vodafone was probably a little bit more youthful at that time. But I think with this one, Airtel probably would have, shaken their perch in that sense.
See, Vodafone was always, you're absolutely right, by the way, in how you put it in your analysis, because that's used to come back month on month on all brand reads that we used to see. So Vodafone would stand out in premium stroke international, like premium in international sense, not from money wise, but international imagery, innovative, and because of all that pug, etc. And I mean, cute, and somebody who's sort of kind of relatable still. Idea was very rural, son of the soil, very affordable, and Airtel was this stature, leadership, mature, but I look up to you. I really want to, grow up and own you kind, homegrown, but really with substance and all of that. So it was very, very. The three brands had very distinct personalities actually, and the brand differentiation was pretty solid between the three.
Now with Jio, it's a really interesting one, right? Because if you see Jio, at one side they have this nice colorful logo and digital, and they try to create this very youthful young world. At the same time, of course, the Reliance is a very overhang of industry and industrious and hardworking, etc. So it must be quite interesting on how an Airtel Vodafone Idea and a Reliance Jio would be sort of fighting in their sort of a mind space. I think Reliance Jio had the right to take the idea positioning, which is rural and affordable, but I think the way they have crafted their personality, I think they want to be more youthful. So it may not be an easy game right now.
Yeah. Even if you look at codes of advertising in the telecom industry, they've completely changed. I mean, not just today, but since Jio entered, I think it was in 2018 that I think they entered. They just democratized, and Jio was a price warrior, right? So they came and they completely disrupted the industry. And now, if you look at any advertising that the telecom sector does, it's very functional. So whether it is giving 4G speed tests, or it is talking about mobile data, it's all about, I'll give you a functional proof that I have the best speed, I have the lowest rates, etc., etc. So back in those days, the brand KPIs that we would be chasing, apart from TOMA and intention to purchase, etc., were brand I love, all these emotional parameters and emotional drivers were actually resulting in brand growth and business growth. So the brand is for someone like me, the brand is I love the brand, is the brand that I want to be seen with, etc., etc. Those were actually things that we used to focus on, and I think over the years it's now changed to more functional parameters, like has the best speed, has the highest network, is the most affordable brand, etc., etc. So there has been a shift for sure.
Not a very shift in the positive direction in my mind. Yeah, and I'll tell you why I'm saying what am I saying. Is because, see, I understand that the telecom industry has now reached almost 100% penetration, right? And now the game is more data. Only data is about 68% penetrated apparently. Yeah. So even though the game is data, but also there is this whole, I think, an understanding between the three players, and they're not fighting as much on price. So now when you're not fighting as much on price, and your market is penetrated and you're trying to steal share, actually it should be about emotional triggers logically it should right now be more about brand building to shift, because how much can you beat each other up on quality and network, so maybe it is just the tough times that the industry has gone through in terms of their bottom line and so on and so forth, which is probably driving the whole pressure to deliver, and hence trying to win it through perception, which is what they're doing. But to a marketeer, well-crafted brand always is the easier way to shift, because everything else is the same. The only thing that can cause a shift is an emotional tug.
I know. I
So
completely agree with you. I think if I look at how the telecom industry has matured, we started out, as you rightly said, with brand building, and even in those days, there were functional parameters. For example, network has always been one of the key drivers for the telecom industry, and Vodafone was trying to say that through the pug, but it was a very interesting way of saying, wherever you go, my network follows. So it was
metaphorical.
just not functional; it was functional plus emotional. And then the whole price phase started, where all you had a lot of foreign players like Uninor and Etisalat and all of these guys entering, and that was a difficult phase. And then the data phase started, where everybody was just trying to explain that I have the best speed and I have the lowest data rates. I think now we've reached a stage where everybody understands, like, data and speed and pricing is given. Now what's the value? So what kind of content can you bundle with it? How much more value can you give me for my for my data connection? I think that's where it's kind of gone now.
The other thing which is interesting for me is that see, most brands are about happiness. So if you see a Coke is about happiness, Donald's Burgers is about happiness, Domino's is about Khushio ki home delivery, Dairy Milk is about happiness, Good Day is about a smile. So everybody is about happiness, right? But what is interesting about the telecom industry is that they are about expression. It's about communication and expression. And I think at one time it was express yourself, right? I think which Airtel used to use. So, which is about really being able to talk to other people, reach out, break boundaries, and so on and so forth. Which is also a very fertile space, self-expression, communication. These are a very fertile space for actually advertising and emotional advertising. So,
I completely
it'll
agree
be
with
very
you.
interesting to see that how that probably evolves.
How I can give some insight on how the thinking evolved in Airtel. So when I joined in 2007, you're right, it was express yourself, because it was coming from the fact that you are telling people to have a mobile phone connection so that you can talk and express yourself. And then when we reached a significant amount of penetration in 2010-11, I think Airtel had 200 million subscribers. So that's a good enough number. And then the positioning changed from express yourself to barriers break when people talk. That's the boundary ad that you were talking about. So we said it's
Right.
not about self-expression, but it is about communication, because it's not just that a few people have the phone and therefore those are not the first few cohort that you'll say take a phone and express yourself. It's about now everybody has a phone, so connect and talk. That's how barriers break. So from express yourself, we went to barriers break when people talk, which was again rooted in communication. Two, with 2010 this ad, and then there was another ad, I think in 2011, which was in the same youth space, but it was about internet. Jo tera hai wo mera hai, sabka hai internet, where it was the whole positioning and the purpose of the brand changed from bringing you closer to people you love and expressing bonding there, to bringing you closer to people and things you love. And in that things you love, that thing could be a Facebook, that thing could be talking to your friend, that thing could be a piece of news, that day online shopping was not there, but it was thought of that it could be commerce, it could be many other things.
And what is the kind of a business results? Did you guys measure it? Track shifts happened and all of that? Did it deliver to your campaign objectives?
Yes. So the way we used to measure these thematic, we used to call them thematic brand campaigns, was again shift in brand imagery parameters. So for this, again, this was a part of a massive exercise with logo change, etc. also. But the parameters were, again, are you moving on the parameter of the brand is more youthful, the brand is more for someone like me, is a brand that I want to be seen hanging out with. Those kind of parameters. Have there been a shift in perception for 18-year-olds? And obviously it was done over a series of interventions and over a period of time, but those were the things that we tracked after this campaign.
So, wonderful conversation about Airtel. I mean, I think it has brought that nostalgia back with us again. Now, I'm curious to know about Saurabh. What are the key takeaways and learnings from this particular conversation for our viewers and
Great.
listeners?
No, I think I love this advertising. This Har Ek Friend Zaruri Hota Hai, I think is one of those ads that we all feel nostalgic about. And as we have grown out, we always remember probably the time when we first heard it and how it hit all of us, right? I think it's just one of a really lovable piece of communication. Yeah. But let's now, come out to the learnings. And for me, the top three learnings are: one, when the TG is the same, something like a network, everybody uses it. All of the three top players have always had 200 to 300 million consumers, right? When you have virtually universal audience, it often becomes about psychographic segmentation, right? And hence we notice how the three players then had a very clear psychographic targeting. So you had idea talking about affordability and slightly more rural. You had Vodafone talking more metros and slightly more international, and you had an Airtel which is really talking about something which is stature, some prestige, something to look up to. Yeah. But while psychographic segmentation can take you to a point, it comes to the second learning about the fact that how communication can drive imagery shift and acquiring a new consumer. So what Airtel said is we want to continue doing the penetration task. And to penetrate, we need to get more young adults in. Young adults are typically youth. So how do I become more youthful? And again, I think Har Ek Friend Zaruri Hota Hai cracked that. It cracked the code of the youth. It did it in a manner which is still Airtel. It still used the hummable beat towards the end, but it made a beautiful piece of advertising, which in a very subtle manner told the consumer that all your friends are using Airtel. Are you being left out? And if not, why don't you join the bandwagon? So I think it did this whole task of getting a new TG really well. Yeah.
Right.
The third learning for me is about education. In technology products, especially, while there is a brand and a thematic imagery, but what is also important is for the first mover to really explain how a service works. Whether it is, a 4G network, what's the difference, why you pay more, role of data, is it important, not important, what should you pay, giving reassurance on your network or your speeds or connectivity. So hence I feel that, while this is a lovely category, it is also pretty emotional in the way they talk about stuff, but really the education job always remains in the fag end, right? And hence, just to sort of summarize, it gives us this conversation tells us about psychographic segmentation and segmenting people by attitudes. Second, it tells us about how a beautiful piece of communication can retain your brand core, but bring in a new cohort into your stream. And third, how education remains a job to be done, especially in technology-led products. So I think for me, these are the top three takeouts of this conversation.
Superb, Saurabh. And I think there are different takeaways. We are getting it from you, episode after episode. And this was a different category, one of my favorite ad. And the takeaways are really powerful. And thank you so much for sharing them with us.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the next time.
Same here. Thank you so much.